So why do I think that turning to a manual exposure setting is going to help the learning process? Well, previously I suggested that when we use auto settings on anything, we tend not to pay too much attention to what's going on, depending on how much confidence we have in those auto settings, of course. Previously I used the analogy of satellite navigation, and I confess that I relied on it so much that quite often, when I need to go to the same place a week or two later, I still need my satellite navigation to take me there, because I haven't really paid attention to the route. When we use a manual setting in our camera, we are still using the same light meter, the one that can easily be fooled by excessive light or dark parts of the scene. The same light meter that can be adversely affected by high contrast light or high contrast scenes. But I'm not suggesting that we follow what our camera wants to do blindly, and we still need to apply some logic and common sense to the exposure we're going to give. Let me explain a eureka moment I had many years ago with regard to exposure. I used to go to UK air shows to photograph the aircraft, but I couldn't understand why the photographs of aircraft in flight varied quite so much. Those on the ground seemed to be exposed very much better. The exposure meter is taking its reading from the white fluffy cloud, and like our white card experiment, that gives the wrong exposure. The same light source, the sun, is lighting the aircraft exactly the same whether they're flying against a white cloud or the blue sky. Of course, back in those days, we couldn't take a look at the LCD on the back of the camera, or study the histogram, or even those blinkies. So what we have is our black and white card scenario all over again, but perhaps not quite as severe as that. But it's certainly enough to spoil the shot. And these issues are still with us. It hasn't changed in the digital age. We should expect to have the same exposure for both the blue sky and the fluffy white clouds, unless, of course, the silhouette was our intention. We have to keep in mind that our camera reads light which is reflected from the subject, and that's what gives us the problem with the flying aircraft. The solution is to use light falling onto the subject, but where can we get a meter reading like that? Well, we could use a handheld exposure meter that would record an incident light reading, but they're a little bit out of fashion these days. But maybe not all progress is positive. There are various dodges we could use, but taking a meter reading off of a grey card will be a great place to start. Why not carry a grey card in your camera bag? You don't have to buy one, as I did many years ago. We can now just print them on our printer. Drop the grey card on the ground, fill the frame with the card, and adjust manual metering controls until the metering is correct according to the camera. Now point, focus and shoot, and you will see a pretty good exposure. Try the grey card for a few photographic trips, but use it in conjunction with a manual setting, and you will soon see a pattern start to emerge. After a while, you'll find that there are all sorts of subjects around that can take the place of the 18% grey card. With a manual exposure set, frame up on sunlit grass, which will be very close to 18% grey. If not, take a look at the pavement you're standing on, the concrete. We can do this with some confidence because we can see the results on the LCD. Try one of those options and then you can verify what you've shot on the histogram using the blinkies if you have them. That exposure will remain constant until the light changes. So if the sun goes behind some clouds, take another grey card reading, or frame up on the concrete around you again. Adjust the exposure, take a quick test shot, and you're away again. Recently, we were in a position to be able to shoot some birds, but the lighting conditions were quite difficult, and this method worked great because if the bird landed in front of a light patch of leaves 1 minute and then in front of a dark shadow the next, the exposure wasn't fooled. We got the correct exposure for the birds that we were shooting. Given that we now have the benefit of an LCD screen on the back of our camera, perhaps even the grey card is not entirely necessary. But it is worth trying for a few weeks because you will be surprised what you learn from it.